Thousand Autumns, is a Meng Xi Shi novel. This is an audiobook made by fans for other fans. Disclaimer. The main couple of the story is made up of two men. If you don't like it, don't listen. Thank you. Remember, subscribe and click the bell to stay updated on all the new releases. Enjoy. Chapter 71. The sort of state that Yan Wushi was in now was 100 times more complicated than Shen Qiao was before. Although Shen Qiao sustained heavy wounds from falling from the cliff, his illness lingered as a result of the Xiangjianhuan poison flaring up within his body. However, his damaged meridians had already been thoroughly repaired by the true qi of the Zuyang-Ce, and the remaining Xiangjianhuan poison had already been expelled from his body after he had destroyed his Wuzhong. Even though his eyes suffered from the effects of the poison and would never completely heal, his foundations were reconstructed by the Zuyang-Ce and his Wuzhong would have to be relearned from the beginning. However, he would not be met with any future troubles any longer. But Yan Wushi would not be like this. His original demonic core had suffered a flaw. This had always been the problem. It had a flaw, and this flaw was taken advantage of by Guan Lingxin when the masters had besieged Yan Wushi. They had caused the flaw to become even larger, as well as severely wounded his head, leaving his meridians in such disorder, his Niexi in such chaos that it impacted his natural disposition and caused it to experience such change. As a result, there were at least three things that had to be done. The first was to treat his head wound. They already had the Yukong wrong, so this did not pose any trouble any longer. The second was to sort out his meridians, and the third was to repair his demonic core. The second and third matters were mutually linked to one another. Taking care of one would, in turn, take care of the other. If the flaw remained unable to be repaired, then he would remain in chi deviation. The dangers of his disordered meridians, as well as the issues his meridians posed in general, would once more impact the pace at which his Wuzhong would recover. When Shen Qiao had taken his pulse, this was not necessarily Yan Wushi's true pulse, but instead an omen that suggested that, while all might be fine at first glance, there was still chaos taking place within. However, this could be considered a good start. After all, Yan Wushi was blessed with talent. Since he had already said that the sheet of silk could heal the flaw in his demonic core, then that meant that this would certainly be able to be done. The only thing was whether it would be sooner as opposed to later, as well as how effective it would be. Shen Qiao laid the man on the bed. He then pulled out something white from his sleeve. This was the Yukong Rong that Xie Ling had given him at the ancient city of Ruoqiang. Shen Qiao's wounds that he sustained from being scratched by the monkeys had, at the time, already healed, so he never ate the fruits. Because he now had the support of the Zuyang-Ce's true qi, this would not have had a great effect on him, even though the Yukong Rong certainly could have regulated his qi and breathing. Shen Qiao took the Yukong Rong into his hand. He also found an empty cup, and squeezed the fruit in his hand. The juices of the Yukong Rong trailed down his fingers, and filled half of the cup. He poured in a little bit of warm water, before pressing down Yan Wushi's chin to pry open his lips and have him drink the Yukong Rong water. This item was capable of being regarded as a sacred healing fruit, so naturally it would have a miraculous effect. Normally, even the imperial palace wouldn't have something like this. One would have to go to a place in the Gobi desert like that of the underground ancient city of Ruoqiang to be able to find it. One did not need words to express how precious this fruit was. The monkeys ate the Yukong Rong as a source of food for them throughout the year, which was why their strength was so great and their intelligence so advanced that they were able to pose such a threat. At the time, Yan Wushi had plucked 4 fruits and destroyed the rest, so as to threaten Chen Gong. Afterwards, he had eaten 2, and given Shen Qiao 1. he most likely did not think that this fruit would end up being used for him. Had this been any other person, they would be unlikely to give it to another person, even if the fruit wouldn't have any effect on their person. Once he had drank the Yukong Rong water, Yan Wushi's complexion had evened out somewhat. Only then did Shen Qiao put the cup down and continued to meditate, while also thinking about the issue that concerned the Zuyang Ce. The Zuyang Ce was composed of 5 volumes. Amongst them, one was written about the Wuzhong of the demonic sects. This was precisely the contents of the sheet of silk that Yan Wushi had seized from Chen Gong's hands. Chen Gong had also read several of the 1,000 characters. They were sublime words with profound meaning, and had indeed been a commentary of the Ryu sect's Wuzhong in that year. It was no use for Shen Qiao to read it over more than he did, because he cultivated a Daoist core. This had nothing to do with him. Amongst the 4 volumes that dealt with the Confucianist, Buddhist, and Daoist schools of thought, Shen Qiao had studied 2 of them. One was taught to him by his inchi, Qi Fengge. The other, he had gotten a hold of at Ch71 Temple. He had read it aloud himself as everyone watched. It was already destroyed by Yan Wushi. As for the other 2 volumes, one was hidden in the imperial palace of northern Zhou, while the other was with the Tiantai Buddhist sect. Because of the Zuyang Ce's reputation, everyone considered this the most remarkable book in the entire world. Each person would fall over one another in their eagerness to possess it. That day, when Douyinshan had received news regarding the whereabouts of a volume of the Zuyang Ce, he had ordered Yun Fui, the secondary Bangzu of the Liu Hebang, to buy it under the identity of a hired escort, and using that same identity, deliver it there. Who knew that it would be intercepted by Yan Wushi halfway, and, in the end, destroyed by him. As a result, Douyinshan hated Yan Wushi down to the bone. The fact that he participated in the assassination was not strange at all. To anyone else, they would think that Yan Wushi's methods were truly deserving of hate. However, many knew of the Zuyang Ce's advantages, but they did not know how it was so advantageous, even going as far as to assume that its contents were about some exceptional Wuzhong that, when cultivated, would allow them to be the greatest master in the world. Even the former Qi Fengge and present Yan Wushi did not see through its contents in its entirety. Up until Shen Qiao had destroyed his Wuzhong did he know the unusual essence of the Zuyang Ce, and with this essence did he reconstruct his foundations. If one had, from the beginning, started to cultivate true Qi of the Zuyang Ce which combined the greatest aspects of Confucianism, Buddhism, and Daoism, then their skills would surpass that of many other people right then. As their foundations would be different, then the realm that they would enter afterwards would naturally be different from them as well. However, even if many of the great masters knew of this, they could not possibly destroy their own Wuzhong and begin to cultivate the Zuyang Ce. Additionally, those who had already read parts of the Zuyang Ce would naturally have a sentimental attachment to it, and most of them would not want to share their knowledge with others. As a result, the number of people in the world who could truly understand the Zuyang Ce's essence most likely was not more than a handful at first glance. At present, Shen Qiao could be said to be solemnly standing halfway up a great mountain and able to see that the world was great and vast, that everything was possible. However, this was not quite as good as a person who stood at the peak of the mountain. Though each volume of the Zuyang Ce were independently written one after the other, all of them were connected, to some extent, with one another. As a result, Shen Qiao would now occasionally cultivate up to a certain point that he would not necessarily understand, and be unable to find an answer, forcing him to fumble for one on his own. Perhaps once he finished reading the other 2 volumes, this sort of issue would be completely reversed. The volume in the imperial palace of northern Zhou was quite possible. but with the last time that he had met Yuan Yang, the man would perhaps be unwilling to allow him to read it. But the one hidden in Tiantai sect would be much more difficult. The Buddhist and Daoist sects have never shared friendly relations. As every sect in the world was fighting to unite the world under their own systems, they already found their own leaders to support. All of them fought amongst one another endlessly. The Tiantai Buddhist sect would not possibly give their own sect's well-guarded treasure to someone who had no relation to them without rhyme or reason. Shen Qiao thought about this until the middle of the night. His head dizzied with this, he gradually fell asleep. Until the light of early dawn reached their room and thoroughly woken him up. This moment of sleep was not very deep. However, Shen Qiao had studied the practices of the Daoist schools ever since he was a child. His personality was such that he did not desire great fame or wealth. He never had been met with any situation that was so hopeless that he would bury it in his heart. Additionally, he had always resigned to carry a clear conscience through all matters, so naturally he would not spend each day filled with anxiety. Though he did not think deeply on these things, he was able to recuperate somewhat as a result. However, this simple way of living carried with it a sense of naivete. But after having essentially experienced a series of falls, this naivete had precipitated from his nature. Admittedly, he still treated others with the same utter innocence and wholehearted devotion that he always did. Yet he had also gradually learned how to distinguish the true intent of other people, and would not so easily be deceived by others any longer. Though his eyes had not yet opened, he could still sense someone gazing at him from the bed. He did not need to see to be able to know who it was. However, he did not know which disposition would greet him when he woke this time. If it were that ruthless and cruel one from the evening before, he would have to knock him out again. Either that, or hire a drawn carriage and toss him in there before carrying on with the journey, so as to avoid any more inconveniences from then on. Shen Qiao's thoughts quickly came to a stop. He slowly opened his eyes. Though there was some distance between them, he was able to make out the expression the other man was wearing. Though Yan Wushi's complexion was calm, his gaze was unknowable. His heart beat somewhat anxiously. "Yan Zongju," he said in a voice that did not sound especially happy. Yan Wushi laughed thoughtfully. "What? You seem as though you didn't want to see me." "That isn't it," Shen Qiao said, his eyelids falling somewhat. "It was most likely you that put this woman's disguise on me, wasn't it?" Yan Wushi said. "The situation was rather serious, and I needed to act quickly. This was to prevent people from wanting to pay close attention to us, and allow Yan Zongju to return to Chang'an as quickly as possible." Yan Wushi did not seem to mind. He even touched his hair and his sleeves as though deeply interested in this fact, before saying to Shen Qiao, "If you're going to disguise me as a woman, then you should at least try to make me look like one. Most women paint their fingernails. And if they don't do that, then they'll at least apply a little bit. Otherwise, if someone observant were to notice their bare hands, then they would immediately know that they were a man disguised as a woman." Shen Qiao frowned. "How would I know something like that?" he thought. "It's not like I've ever been disguised as a woman before." Instead, he said, "Yan Zongju is correct. If you would like some Polish, then I will certainly go out to purchase it for you." Yan Wushi raised one eyebrow and laughed. "You really seem like you don't want to talk to me at all, do you? What's wrong? Xieling is but a fraction of some fragment of my spirit. To think that he would win over your respect so much that you would even wait on him with such gentleness, and yet refuse to even spare a word with me. Could it be, Qiao, that you've forgotten who the real Yan Wushi is?" The day that Shen Qiao had decided to save Yan Wushi, he did not do this because he wanted the man to repent for what he had done, much less try to win his favors. But who would have known that Yan Wushi's disposition would become fragmented the way that it did, and that he would be met with Xieling and Ayan. Such a thing was completely beyond his expectations. Otherwise, he did not wish to quarrel with the man at all. He could only eagerly look forward to the future where he would never even see his face again. Xieling is Xieling, Yan Wushi is Yan Wushi. No matter what happens, I would not dare to forget Yan Zongju, Shen Qiao said, indifferently. Yan Wushi's gaze fell upon the wound on Shen Qiao's lip. He laughed, taken aback by the sight. What, did Xieling lose so much of my memories that he even forgot how to kiss someone, and instead bit you out of fear? Only after Shen Qiao had come to did he realize himself that a small pain spread through his lips. However, he was never very good at answering back with sarcasm, and could only remain silent and refuse to answer. Yan Wushi did not seem to mind. He laughed once more and said, since we've already found that sheet of silk, the day that the flaw of my demonic core will be healed is imminent. This matter is, indeed, thanks to you. Had you not taken me into Ruoqiang, I would never have been able to take the sheet of silk from Chen Gong. Ah Qiao, to think that you'd return my cruelty with such kindness. You're making me feel somewhat remorseful for handing you off to Sang Jingxin that day. Though he said that he was remorseful, the truth was that his tone did not carry the slightest remorse at all. This was the true Yan Wushi. With the way that he handled matters, even if he had to bear the weight of all the people in the world, he would not feel even the slightest guilt. Even if time could be reversed, it was quite likely that, in order to push Shen Qiao's boundaries, he would still pick the very same decision. Simply, it was just as Yan Wushi said. He did not need friends. He only needed an opponent, and his opponent was someone who would be matched in strength with him, someone who was worthy enough to stand beside him. Everything else was simply Shen Qiao's miscalculations, having suffered from an unrequited affection, and nothing more. How could Shen Qiao possibly not understand this up until now? For this reason, he didn't respond. Instead, he asked about the matter at hand. Once we have departed from Wang City and began to head towards the Central Plains, the chances that your whereabouts will be leaked becomes greater still. With your present cultivation, you would most likely want to avoid running into Switing Chanchi and the others for now, I'm sure. You are, at present, a target for all, and completely surrounded by enemies. If you are discovered, then it would be endlessly troublesome. However, the journey from here to Chang'an is not a short one. Do you have any plans on how we should go about it? Yan Wushi, upon seeing how indifferent his expression was, clearly did not want to keep chattering about on his own. Yet the sight of that wound on Shen Qiao's lips destroyed whatever self-restraint he had. He looked like the carved statue of an immortal that had suddenly been stained with the smoke and fire of the mortal world. His heart suddenly took interest in this, and he could not help but deride him further. You have never had any connection with Northern Zhou. It couldn't possibly be because you'd met Yuan Yang that one time that you are suddenly so willing to stand by him and help me, could it? Let me take a guess, then. Could it be that you had some feelings for me early on? And then you became so heartbroken by the fact that I had given you off to Sang Jingxin, but old loves are hard to forget. When Xieling appeared, it must have reignited some former affection of yours, which compelled you to dress me in women's clothing. Perhaps you wanted to take advantage of me when I was unconscious, since it would be too late for me to do anything to you, and have me offer myself to you. Even though Shen Qiao was an honorable and decent man, he was still embittered by the narcissistic nature of his words, If Yan Zongju is unwilling to speak properly, I could simply hit you unconscious and take you back to Chang'an just the same. Yan Wushi burst out laughing. Okay, okay. There's no need to be angry. We won't be returning directly back to Chang'an. We will first go to Weizhou. He always had that sort of temperament that changed repeatedly. Before, when his mood was good, he would talk and laugh in a soft, gentle voice. That he would use his gentleness to lure and deceive was also not uncommon. Why? Shen Qiao frowned. It's just as you said. My Wuzhong has yet to recover, Yan Wushi said, and my presence would attract too much attention. The Liu Hebang, Buddhists, Hehuan sect, Fahing sect, and even people of Tuzhou all want me dead. And with your present abilities, you wouldn't be completely able to protect me either. Shen Qiao could only think, and who is to blame for that? You have enemies all over the world. This isn't something that a number of people, no matter how small, are capable of doing. If it weren't for the fact that I am considering the present situation and deciding not to argue with you, then I'd have long ago joined them in chasing and killing you myself. Yan Wushi did not hear his thoughts, but Shen Qiao's expression had already betrayed them. Yan Wushi thought that it was deeply amusing. He gazed at him for a long time, before asking, "Has there been any news from Chang'an? I heard that northern Zhou's army drove directly into northern Qi without any resistance. Northern Qi did not have the strength to resist. If nothing unexpected has happened, then they most likely have already taken Ye city." Yan Wushi responded with a soft "N." When I was by Yuan Yang's side, I had already arranged a number of people to watch over him. Nothing should happen to him in a short time. If something does happen, then we wouldn't be able to make it back in time even if we tried. Huanyu sect has an official residence in Weizhou. Let's go there first to rest, before finding someone to send a message to Chang'an. Since he had made the decisions, Shen Qiao did not object to it. Then you should rest first. Where are you going? Yan Wushi asked. I'm going to buy you some nail polish, Shen Qiao said. For the first time in his life, Yan Wushi was at a loss for words. The two of them remained in Wang city of Tuyuhan for several more days, before setting out to return to northern Zhou. Before they left, Shen Qiao had gone alone in secret to Banna's house to visit. It seemed that Chen Gong did not go back on his word. Her grandfather had indeed returned, and the two of them, grandfather and grandchild, were safe and sound. Only then was his heart at ease, and left without a sound. Yan Wushi's other dispositions continued to fluctuate as they always did. However, while the moments where he was conscious became more and more common, Shen Qiao noticed that the first disposition to be put to rest was the violent and ruthless one that attacked and never spoke. The others rarely made themselves present in the day, but instead would come out at night, one after the other. In other words, the Yan Wushi that was present in the day, was no different from his former self. However, each time that Xie Ling appeared, he would still depend greatly on Shen Qiao. He would even go without sleeping, instead choosing to gaze at Shen Qiao all throughout the night. This was something that the original Yan Wushi had no way to control. As a result, during most of the day, Yan Wushi lacked energy, and would have to meditate and rest. At the beginning of the second month, they arrived at Weizhou city. And the impending danger had also, quietly, grown nearer. End of the chapter. Stay tuned for more BL.